All right. So, hi everybody. This is kind of a webinar workshop on the LifeSci NYC Internship Program here in New York. We have a collection of people coming in from the was it the Upper West Side Strategies, a consulting firm that's powered by the Economic Development Corporation. We have Sharon Kaplan. We have hold on, let me pull up these names because I can't see them all right away. Uh, we have Bill and we have Sophia as well to talk about this program. So, with that, I'm going to hand off the mic. We're all here, we're all listening. Please share with us everything you would like us to know about LifeSci NYC.
Thank you, Professor Alvarado, and thank you all for joining us today. Um, I am Sharon Albert Kaplan from the LifeSci NYC Internship Program, and we're happy to tell you about our program today. And as Professor Alvarado mentioned, I'm joined today by Bill Hammersley, our program coordinator, as well as Sophia Senderak, who is a CUNY campus ambassador. That is, she is an alumna of our program and went through the same process that you'll go through if you apply, and is going to speak a little bit about that later in our presentation. So the LifeSci NYC Internship Program, as Professor Alvarado mentioned, is part of the New York City Economic Development Corporation's 10-year, $1.1 billion initiative to grow the life sciences industry in New York City. We run the workforce development piece of that effort, and through that effort, we offer paid internships for college and graduate students in all types of roles, including science, business, and tech. In addition to that, we sometimes post entry-level full and part-time jobs as well. We are now in our 9th year, and since 2017 have placed over 1,200 interns into over 250 different companies and organizations. A quick word about eligibility for the program. I imagine you are all eligible. However, you must be legally
Sorry,
able to work
a
in the
bit of
United
technical
States. That could
difficulty.
be either as a U.S. citizen, a permanent resident, a DACA participant, or somebody with TPS,
Hi, Sharon.
or you might be an international student with a work visa
Sharon,
that allows you to work in the United States without sponsorship.
we gotta
Generally,
ask you
we
to
see
pause for a
F1.
second.
Yep.
Try this. Up, 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 up. There we go. We asked you to say something?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Sorry about that. You're back.
Oh,
We,
did you miss a lot of what I said before?
maybe the last 20 seconds or so. I'm sorry about that. But we hear you loud and clear now.
Okay, so just a word about eligibility for our program. You must be able to work legally in the United States. So you may be a US citizen, permanent resident, DACA participant, TPS participant, or be an international student with a work visa that allows you to work in the United States with sponsorship. Usually we see F1 visas, and people use either CPT or the first year of OPT to work at a position through our program. You must either be enrolled at a college or university in New York City, I believe you all are, as you go to Queens College, or be a New York City resident who is enrolled anywhere. We are also open to those who have graduated in the last 2 years. So right now that means if you graduated in spring 2024 or later, you are also eligible. We are open to both undergraduate and graduate students, and we have a soft requirement for at least a 3.0 GPA. However, if your GPA is lower, you may still apply. We would just ask that you give us a brief explanation of any extenuating circumstances that may have affected your GPA. I'm going to ask, what does life sciences mean in an industry context? And do people have access to the chat in this, Professor
No,
Alvarado?
they do not.
Okay,
I've invited them to walk up when they have questions near the end of it.
okay, that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So anyways, I'm going to ask you all to think about what life sciences means to you in an industry context. We define it as broadly as we possibly can because we want to provide as many different opportunities to applicants to our program as we can. So that definitely includes pharmaceuticals, something probably that comes to mind for a lot of you. It also includes medical devices and medical technology. It includes things that connect with actual patient care or clinical care. Digital health is a big component of the industry here in New York City. So that might be something where there's an app that connects patients and payers or healthcare providers or allows people just to keep better track of their health. And then we also work with hosts that might be supporting the industry in, say, a financial context or through public relations or advertising, but specifically focusing on biotechnology or healthcare. And then finally, we also sometimes work with organizations that have a life science context, but are working in climate tech or food tech. Here is a sampling of the many host companies that we worked with during our last program year. You may notice that most of these names are not familiar to you, and that is to be expected. New York City, the life sciences industry is very nascent. We haven't quite caught up to, say, Boston or the Bay Area yet. So many of the companies here are quite small. They are startups. However, a startup can be a really amazing place to work. You usually get to work side by side with, say, the founder, the CEO, the people who came up with the idea, and everybody in these places wears a lot of hats. So you get exposure to a lot of different types of work and types of responsibilities that you would find in the industry. Here, we've taken those companies that you saw on the prior slide, and we've divided them by these different areas of the industry. So as you can see, we do have a lot of companies that fall under that digital health and health tech area. And we also have a lot in sustainability, climate tech, and food tech. New York has a really active green economy sector. We have a number that are in hospitals and academic medical centers. And a bonus for all of you is that many of the positions that we post for those hospitals and academic medical centers are often limited to candidates from CUNY. So that gives you just a little bit of a leg up. And then we also have a lot of companies that are doing pharmaceuticals, biotech, diagnostics, some in the medical equipment and devices area, a number that are doing marketing and business consulting, a good number of nonprofits that are doing education or outreach activities. And sometimes if you feel like, you would love a research position, but maybe, you're having a hard time making progress and applying for those roles, sometimes a STEM education position is a great place to start, as those tend to be more open to those with a less level of experience. And you could parlay that into maybe a research opportunity in the future. And then finally, as I mentioned, there are a number of nonprofits and foundations hiring as well. Here is just a very dense list of sample internship positions that you might see if you apply to our program and log into our job portal. These vary all the time. Each company tells us what they need and we post their positions, but some things you might see frequently are bioinformatics positions, R&D, and technician roles. A good number that incorporate computer science, machine learning, data science, maybe clinical assistant type roles. And then we also have business type roles. You don't have to choose one area to apply. You just need to look at specific roles to see how you do in terms of qualifying for that particular role. But some of the business type roles we post might be a marketing intern, a business development intern, data analytics, sometimes development in a fundraising context for not-for-profits, market research, and much more. So a few words about the timing of how our program works. Our application is open year-round. If you are specifically looking for a summer internship, even though summer is, a few months away now, I would recommend applying now. A lot of our companies are starting to post positions for summer, and they will usually accept applications until they get an applicant who meets their needs and who they decide to hire, and then the position gets pulled down. So the earlier you apply, and then apply for specific roles in our job portal, the better a chance you have of being hired. We do launch a new program cycle every year on September 1st. So if you apply now, your application will be valid through the end of August, and you can apply for as many positions as you like through that date. And then if you would like to continue applying for positions, maybe for next fall or even the next summer, after that, in your next school year, then you will need to resubmit a new application for 2026, 2027. We do the placements on a rolling basis, as I mentioned, as each host company is ready to hire and as they find the candidates that seem to be a fit for them. Anybody who does get placed into an internship or job through our program is invited to our annual Career Summit, which is a 2-day program that takes place at the end of May, just before summer internships tend to start. It's a really great opportunity to meet your fellow interns who will be working in many different companies and organizations throughout the city, as well as hear from leaders in the field and meet those leaders in the field, do some networking, and take part in professional development programming. As I mentioned, the start and end dates of our positions vary. We have fall internships, spring internships, lots of summer internships, and some jobs. And so often summer internships are usually a full-time opportunity. Academic year internships vary a lot and usually can be worked out between the company and the person they choose to hire. A quick overview of how our placement process works. Do note that we will share a copy of this slide deck with you following the info session. And you will get access to all these links that you can find here. But you apply online. Once you submit your application, then we give you a link so that you can log into our job portal anytime you like to see our list of current openings. Anytime you see a position that seems to be a good fit for you and you want to apply for it, we ask that you submit a cover letter through our portal, through our online portal, to apply for that particular role. That tells our team to take a look at your full application, both that cover letter and the other materials that you originally submitted with your online application. And then if we find you qualified for that position, we are going to forward your application to that particular company. And then it is up to the companies to decide who they wish to interview and ultimately who they wish to hire. I will note that our summer internship postings are only available within our portal. And that's, so you cannot see what summer internships we are hiring for unless you have submitted an online application. If you wish to view our non-summer opportunities, so an academic year internship or a full-time job opportunity, we do list all of those at this offline site, and you will be able to view those positions there. And then if you want to apply for them, there are, again, instructions for accessing our portal, our online applications. You can apply to the program and then apply for that position. Here are a few snapshots of what our program looks like beyond the job, the internship itself. As I mentioned, we have that Career Summit for 2 days in May. Great opportunity. Gets high ratings every year from those who participate. Also, over the course of the summer, if you are an intern in our program, you'll get to go to intern talks, participate in those talks as well, maybe go to site visits at some biotech employers around the city. We sometimes also offer tours and career panels. And then we also have really great networking events where you get to meet a lot of leaders in the field here in New York City and make those connections that will be so crucial as you pursue your career going forward. I am now going to turn the microphone over to Bill, who is going to share with you how to apply to our program and how to be a strong applicant.
Thanks so much, Sharon. So Great to be here with y'all, folks. My name is Bill. I work on the placement team that Sharon supervises in our program. And so what that means is that one of the core responsibilities of my job is processing all of the applications that come through for the clients who we partner with. There's two of us who do this work, and last year, between the two of us, we covered, I think the final number was like 14,000 cover letters. So in addition to that, year by year, we also meet in one-on-one sessions, which we'll talk a little bit more about for career coaching. So, everything we're about to say to you today is sort of based on that data, and also based on some of the expectations of our program. In places, those program expectations might be a little different than what you've heard elsewise. So make sure that as we move through this, you are considering the specific context of our program as well. So one of the first elements of a strong application with us is a strong personal statement. Personal statement is not required for the program, but it is encouraged. It's a great way to sort of test drive the work that you'll be doing in your cover letters when you apply to positions with us. And the goal of a personal statement should be to outline the relevant experience and qualifications you have, as well as what you might want to learn. If you are somebody who has a really clear sense of what their 5-year plan is, that's wonderful. That can go into a personal statement. But if you're someone who's thinking, much more short term, maybe you know that you want to work in software engineering after school, you know that you need to have a couple months of programming experience to be competitive for those roles. And so maybe in your personal statement, you'd talk about how it's a goal of yours to get a first, couple months of experience in that field. Make sure that you are answering the question here. Especially when you think long term, it's easier to be vague. And so I would encourage you to be specific about what you hope to get out of the program, as well as the skill sets that you bring to the program. And so whether you do this or not, this is a great way to practice how you'll be speaking about yourself in your cover letters. And cover letters are a required component of our application that we'll talk about more going forward in the presentation. Strong applications also emphasize interest in the life sciences. This is especially true if you are somebody who is coming to us, from like an adjacent field. So if you are a comp sci student, or if you are like an econ student and you're hoping for data work or business work in startups, it's really important that you take some time to, talk about why you're interested in doing that in the STEM field as opposed to finance or ed tech or other areas. And really, be broad with what you consider as applicable experience. Sometimes we'll meet with students who say that they have no relevant experience, and then we're able to sit down with them and really uncover how like the instructions that they've done in library volunteering, or how like the crisis management they've done in retail jobs might be relevant. Take some time to really review these documents. It's easy for our eyes to get tired as we're reviewing these. It's easy to sort of miss those small mistakes. So rely on other people to help you proofread. That can be a member of our team. That can be Sophia as a campus ambassador. That can be your career services. But especially when you are submitting as many applications as people need to submit these days, it's easy to miss those typos. And when we're applying to jobs, it can feel like, oh gosh, are they really going to kick me out because of a typo in my resume? But the reality is that so many jobs these days require people to be clear and professional communicators, even if that's not a core function of the job. And a resume and a cover letter is a great way for people to assess that skill set for you before they even sit down to interview with you. Another optional component of applications that can really enrich your application is recommendations. This can be everything from a science teacher in high school that you've worked with, to an athletic coach, to maybe a professor that you've done an independent study with in college. We really try to be broad here. The only hard and fast rule we have is that you shouldn't be using family or friends for these references. And to get the best possible reference out of your reference provider, it's a good idea to give them a heads up. If you're submitting this application, text them the week or two before, asking if they'll be your reference. Give them some information about the program and what sort of roles you might be interested in. And then, if this person has supervised you in the past, or if they've been like a volunteer coordinator for you in the past, remind them of the projects that you did underneath their supervision and give them some context for how they might talk about you. So if you can help make those connections for them, it can really strengthen the reference. Even, very dedicated supervisors, if they've supervised you a long time ago, they might not have the notes of like your performance on hand. So reminding them, what was great about you and how you hope they might talk about you is a great way to strengthen that reference. The next required component of our application is the resume. Normally, I would ask you all how we feel about resumes, on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are we? I'm still going to pose that question to the room. Think to yourself, how confident are you in resumes? One might be that you haven't written one before, or you've written one a couple times and you haven't really been what you would define as successful. 5 might mean that you have a resume ready to go. You're applying places, you're hearing back from those places. So wherever you are on that 1 to 5 scale, this is what we look for when we look for strong resumes. The first characteristic that I want to outline for us really clearly is that a resume should show what we did in our past experience, how we did that work, and then what was the outcome of the work that we did. Really often, people answer this first question for us. They tell me what they did in their high school home monitor job, or they tell me how many students they helped out in library programming after school, but they don't necessarily give me the specifics of how they did it, what were the methodologies, and then what were the outcomes. A great way to make sure that you are answering all 3 of those questions is just to think longer term about the work that you are putting on your resume. So whether this is volunteer work or whether this is a school project or an actual work experience, think longer term. Don't just think of those small tasks that you do every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Think of, what were the projects that you undertook that, might have lasted a few weeks or even a month. And then once you start to talk about that longer term work, it's easier to answer these 3 questions. Another way to make sure you're answering the 3 questions is to include metrics and data where you can. So instead of saying that you were supervising students in an after-school program, tell us the ages of those students, tell us how many you were responsible for, how did you track success in that program? When you include that data, it really strengthens your resume as well. Especially if you're coming to us from another field that is more technical, your technical skills should be on your resume. This can be research protocols that you've done in class. This can be specific labs that you've done in class. For our comp sci students, this could be specific software that you're fluent in, either from projects or school assignments. It might be programming languages that you're comfortable in. And then if you speak languages yourself, or if you read and write languages yourself, that's great to see on resumes as well. Some of our positions do look for multilingualism, and even if they don't, we process information and we think differently in all of our different languages. Being multilingual can really improve the approach to analysis and problem solving in a work setting. One quick note on programming languages. It's rarely the case that somewhere will say we need Python and we're not going to consider anything else. More often than not, what they'll say is I'm looking for somebody with some experience in any of these languages. This role specifically might focus on Python or C++. So you don't necessarily need to meet all of the requirements of a job, but you should have relevant information on your resume. Anywhere from 75 to 80% of the job description is a good place to start. And then just demonstrate a willingness to learn in your other experiences or in your cover letters as well. You might be listening to me break this all down for you and say, that's great. I don't have those formal work experiences, so I'm not sure exactly what else to do. And you can bring in other factors as well. You might bring in relevant research or a lab that you've done in class. Oftentimes places might look for 0 to 6 months of research experience. If you had a really focused lab course, a semester is covering that 0 to 6 months. If you volunteered before, even if you've had like leadership roles in sports, that all demonstrates teamwork and some of the soft skills that Sebastian was mentioning earlier on when we prepped the room for the facilitation. Those are harder to teach, so companies really value them. And it's also sometimes difficult to quantify those. Volunteer experiences, leadership in organizations or community work, all of these are great things to include on your resume as well. You can update your resume often. If you've used a resume, you've sent out a bunch of applications, you haven't heard back a couple weeks later, that could be an indication that there's something to improve with your resume. We offer resume coaching through us. Sophia is going to talk a little later about the resume coaching that she offers as well. But just remember that if you're not yet getting the responses you hope for in your job search, it can mean a lot of different things, and it's a good idea to sit down with somebody like myself or Sophia or career services on campus just to pulse check how you're approaching things. If your GPA is impressive, you can include it on your resume. You might be wondering what is an impressive GPA, and that depends on your studies and the field that you are studying in. So check in with your academic advisors there. Generally, when we screen applications, we don't use GPA as a factor unless the host actually requires it. It's just not necessarily a clear indicator of like how you might do work or what kind of dedication you might have. So if you feel like your GPA might not be reflecting your level of commitment or your willingness to learn, you can leave it off of your resume and it's not a problem. We're going to shift into cover letters now. So I'm going to pause and ask the same question. Earlier, we talked about on a scale of 1 to 5, how do we feel about resumes? Now we're going to talk about cover letters. And I'd love to just take a moment. You can reflect. How do you feel about cover letters? 1, they're confusing. You're not necessarily sure how to be successful with them. 5, you feel like you totally have cover letters down. And just reflect for yourself where you are on that 1 to 5 scale. And the reason that I'm asking this is because really often when we do ask this question in facilitations where there is a chat, people will say that they're less confident in cover letters than they are in resumes. And the reason for that is that a resume, it's kind of cut and dry what needs to go on it, whereas a cover letter, it's a little different what needs to go on it. It should be different depending on the job you're applying for. It's specifically about the connection between the job you're applying for and your previous experience. So even if it's really, really obvious to you what that connection is, take some time in your cover letter to be really explicit about it for whoever's reading your cover letters. The reason for that is people may be processing hundreds of applications at a time. Like I said, my colleague and I, we went through about 14,000 last year. So you really want to make sure that your cover letter is to the point. I would avoid just using AI on these cover letters. We may not be able to, convince people to not use AI, but it's a lot easier for an AI cover letter to be ineffective. So spend some time with us, spend some time with campus ambassadors to get really good feedback on the cover letter. I want to make sure that I'm leaving time for Sophia to go into her program. So I do just want to draw your attention to one part of this cover letter template. Bullet point number 4 says highlight applicable skills, research internship, work experience, or project experience. And that's 4 to 5 sentences. Just about everything else in the cover letter template is 1 to 2 sentences. The meat of your cover letter really should be about that connection from your previous work to the expectations of this role. A lot of times we'll read cover letters that even though they go on for a page or 2, they never really get to the information in bullet point number 4. So really make sure that you're taking some time to make those connections. If it's harder for you to figure out what those connections are, talk to somebody who's not in your field. It's a great way to understand what we might take for granted. And Sophia, I saw you unmute. That seems like as good a time as ever to pass you the baton. And can you tell them about the Campus Ambassador Program and what you offer?
Thanks, Bill. Hi, everyone. So my name is Sophia Sendrak. I'm a current master's student in the Cognitive Neuroscience program here at CUNY. I'm based mainly out of the Graduate Center, and I also work in a computational neuroscience lab called the Vista Lab that's up at City College. As Bill mentioned, I'm a campus ambassador and also in previous alum of the internship program. I did an internship last summer at Columbia at their Center for Precision Medicine and Genomics in a genetics lab that was focused on nephrology. I really enjoyed my experience. I feel like I got to learn a lot of new information about some fields that I wasn't too familiar with before. I was able to deepen my understanding of some fields that maybe I was familiar with, but didn't have as much hands-on experience with. There are different resources and workshops that were offered by Columbia that were helpful. And I was also able to take advantage of a lot of the networking and social events and programming that LifeSci offered. And probably maybe most importantly, or at least a big factor, is that because of LifeSci, I was also able to get paid for that internship. I was working alongside a lot of students who had come to the lab maybe through other avenues and were just sort of volunteering their time. Because I went through LifeSci, I was able to get paid, which for me made it possible for me to complete that internship instead of having to get another job over the summer, maybe somewhere else. So, as a campus ambassador, my role is to spread the word about the program to other students in the CUNY network, and also serve as a peer-to-peer point of contact for students that are considering applying or that are actively going through the process. So this could be just reviewing various aspects of program information. It could be reviewing cover letters or resumes if you'd like some help with that, or just another set of eyes. Running mock interviews, or really any other support with the process that a student might need. So you can see at the bottom of the slide that's up right now, there's a QR code that will take you to my Calendly page where you can sign up for a slot if you want to connect. I believe we'll have like a little Q&A after this, so happy to talk a little bit more about my experience then if anyone has questions. But if you have any questions after this presentation or want to talk, or as you're going through the process, just feel free to save that QR or go back to it later and then reach out and set up an appointment so we can get in touch.
Thanks so much, Sophia. Here's some info on some events that we have coming up. In March, we have another info session like this one, so tell your friends, especially if they don't go to Queens. And we have an interview workshop coming up just before that on March 4th. You'll get these resources when we mail out the slide deck. But yeah, let's make some time for Q&A. And we'd love to hear your questions.
So I have everybody sitting in front of me. This is the part where you interact or engage, but I'll get things started because people are looking at me like deer caught in the headlights. I guess one thing I've noticed talking to all of you and over the years is that there's this impression that the only people who this program is for are people who have a PhD and they want to go into some research sector, and they don't necessarily see all the opportunities. And I know that you already highlighted it, but I definitely think it helps to emphasize that, especially when it comes to like AI and tech, there are spaces in life sciences, even though there is this disciplinary orientation towards biology. People are often surprised to find out that this is also for them and their interests and career interests. So if you could even share some examples of students that have kind of made that realization through this program, or what else is offered, that'd be great.
I think that it's worth noting that, as I mentioned, New York City has a nascent life sciences industry, but some of the areas where we are strongest include that, digital health area and the need for people who are sort of have facility with AI. That's a really big, um, it's a really big part of a lot of the new advances and new attempts to advance in the life sciences. So I think being in tech is a good place to be. And if you want to take those skills that you're developing and really use them in an area that is going to help people and have an effect on the world, I think, using those skills in a life sciences context and in the life sciences industry is a really great way to do that. Um, as Bill was mentioning, that important part of the cover letter is where you really, equate your interests and your experience with the particular role. So that's the opportunity for you to not only show, let's say that you are in tech, not only show that you have the tech skills that are called for by that position, but that you have a genuine interest in whatever that company's mission is, and in really contributing to that and helping to make it a reality. So I guess there are lots of examples of jobs, and you could look at, say, that even that academic year internship listing that I mentioned and that we link in our slide show. But I think really what you want to think about is that the life science industry does not only need people to do those lab positions. They really need people for every aspect of what they're trying to accomplish. And often that is could also be like, making sure a company is successful. So not only is that the science positions and not only is that the tech positions, but it's the business development and the financial piece. And they not only need business people to do that, but they also need people who understand the science to communicate that information to, other people out there who might support their company.
So then I have one more follow-up, and I'll get a show of hands. How many of you want to go into healthcare or some sort of clinical career? So I see several hands being raised, and I'm wondering, is there a place for people who see themselves as physician's assistants or doctors or anything like that in the companies that you have as clients that are taking interns? There's obviously this life sciences discipline, and everyone here is a bio major for the most part. Is there a space to perhaps develop either before pursuing medical training or during at the same time through LifeSci NYC?
Yeah, in terms of clinical positions that we offer, we do come by them very, very occasionally. I think if you're looking specifically for like clinical shadowing or like nursing or RN experience, those majors do have that built into the major to begin with. Where we tend to direct people to is the very few clinical roles that we do have, but then also things like public health, that you're engaging with people around a specific health issue, or you might be doing advocacy work, or even sometimes like the informatics side of public health as well. And in terms of health advocacy, Sharon, we've had a couple of companies come through in my time doing like advocacy work for specific health issues. And so people interested in that specific side of it as well might be going into like social media management or comms roles for those companies as well.
All right,
Yeah, and I think getting research experience or public health experience can be a really valuable thing for people who are later thinking about applying to, say, medical school or something like that.
Absolutely. I'm going to open up the floor. Does anybody want to come up here and ask a question directly?
We
No.
love your questions.
Yeah, of course. So I'm giving a bit of an awkward silence
And you
that
can ask questions about the process of applying, about the types of positions.
So I guess based off, so I get this report, and so does Career Services, every year about the number of people that applied and then those that were actually screened into some sort of position. Could you let us know if if I apply, am I definitely going to get in? I already know the answer to this because I've seen that report. But where do you see a lot of students falling off in that screening process, and where can they really do the best effort? I know you've given us a lot of guidance here, but I guess what I'm asking is, what do people not listen to in this presentation that leads to their ineligibility to getting considered for these roles?
I think the most important thing is once you've applied to the program, you have to submit cover letters. That is your application for a particular role. And we see a large number of applicants who simply, do their online application and don't submit a cover letter. We are not even going to look at your application until you submit a cover letter. And every time you submit a cover letter, we are going to look at your application again and reconsider it for that particular role. Bill, I'm sure you have other advice to offer as well.
Yeah, I would just say like there are elements of it that is a numbers game. Just keep applying. And I know how it feels. I've job hunted recently in all of the difficult times. It's difficult to keep that energy up, but I think the benefit of our program and one of the great things about having Sophia on the call is we are here providing a little bit more of a feedback loop than you would get if you just applied the job somewhere else, right? So if you are not getting the results you hope to get, it's a great sign to check in with one of us and see if there's additional insights that we can offer to you.
If I can just
Yep.
add one thing too, I think before I got my internship over the summer, I think I applied to maybe 10 or 11 roles. Like Bill said, I think if you've applied for a couple, you're not hearing anything, it's definitely worth getting some more eyes on your resume or cover letter because maybe there is something you can fix. And I did make some changes to mine before I did get my offer, but it also, like Bill said, is kind of a numbers game. It could have been because of the changes I made. It also just could have been because, that's how many it took. Some of the roles I applied for went down maybe like a day or two after I submitted my things because they found someone and you can't really control that. So you just have to keep keep applying and don't get discouraged if you don't hear back from the first few.
Hi, this is Sumaya, and I have this question for Sophia. How was your process like when you apply? Do you get where you're applying, or first you just have to apply to life science, and then you get like offers like where you can apply? And how was the process like, and the time, and the hours that you worked?
Yeah, okay, I'll speak a little bit about that and then might
Thank you.
pass it off to Bill and Sharon to just talk on their end of things about how it goes through the process. But I know for me, I applied to LifeSci, I think it was around November, December at the previous year, got accepted, had access to the job board. Did not start looking until like February. Told myself I was going to do it in January and then I didn't, but then really picked up the ball in February and March, was applying. And the way that it would work is you sort of send it off. And then when my application, if it was to get passed on, to the company I applied for, because the people at LifeSci felt like I was a good fit, I would get an email that said, "Hey, it's been passed on." So that was nice to sort of know that it had made it along. And also I would get emails if the role had been pulled, which was also nice too, because then you're not just like waiting to hear back, you won't. And then you also know it's not necessarily because of anything you did. And then I think I got my offer a little bit later in the spring, just because the place that I and the program I ended up going to, Columbia, had posted a little bit later. So I found out, I think, like in early May. And then I started in early June, and my internship ran from June to the very beginning of August. And it was about a 35-hour per week setup. And mine was mostly in person and then partially remote. I think the positions do tend to be like largely in person with some exceptions. So I was in the lab maybe most of the time with I think in my particular lab, there were about 7 or 8 other students total. And maybe 3 or 4 of those also went through the LifeSci program. And then the others were through different avenues.
I think that was probably super helpful. I don't know if there's other aspects to that questions we can add to.
Okay.
Yeah, do you feel like
Sure. Somebody has one more
Sophia's
follow-up.
response covered what you needed? Or
Actually, I have my own follow-up to myself. One thing I forgot to mention, I feel like I sat on submitting my things to LifeSci for longer than I wish I would have, because I was like, oh, I have to write this personal statement, it has to be great. And like, I mean, it does, and you should try on it. But like the sooner you can get it's the sooner that you apply and your application is processed and you can get access to the positions, the sooner that you can start applying. And so I would not sit on doing the application, even with some optional things like uploading, or if you want to have recommendations. My understanding is I think you can submit and then add those later. Like you don't have to wait on that. And that's something that I did. I was kind of waiting on it to submit and then realized after I didn't need to. So definitely apply, because then you at least have the option of looking earlier.
Hi, this is Sumaya again, and this is a question for Sophia again. What did you do to make your application stronger?
I would say the biggest change that I made as time went on that hopefully probably helped. I did end up restructuring my resume. I really liked how it was before. I made it in Canva. It was very pretty. I was very proud of it, but it did have some columns and things that can make it a little bit hard to read, lots of color. So I did tone it down a little bit. And then I think just also making myself rework it in that way helped me see other areas where I could maybe highlight things a bit differently. And I think through making some changes to how it was structured, I was able to maybe do a better job of showcasing previous research experience I had had, especially because at that point I had already applied to a few roles and was starting to get a good sense for maybe what I wasn't highlighting that I should, or things that I was highlighting that maybe weren't quite as important. So I would say definitely revisiting your resume and your like cover letter template, which, obviously you edit it per role, but you can sort of fall into a rut of using the same thing. Maybe just going back and reviewing those partway through the process after you've applied to a few places can be really helpful.
And also, I do think it's worth emphasizing that anything you submit with your application, if you do want to update it later, you can always email us a PDF copy of, say, your transcript or your resume, and we can update those for you. If you didn't add references initially and you want to, we can also facilitate that. You just need to email us. Job hunting, obviously, is a process that evolves with you. So So you may need to update these things.
Yeah. It was quite fast too. I think I changed my resume 2 times. I think both times it was changed within like a day of submitting it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sophia, Sharon, and Bill. We're all gonna, I don't know if you can hear us, but we do appreciate, there is a small classroom of students here listening to, even though you can't see them. And then of course, there is a broader community we plan on sharing this with. If you want, unless anybody else has any questions, or if there's any last minute things that you guys want to share with us, we can end it here. And then I will happily share the recording with you and of course, Queens College as well. All right.
Thank you. And if you're able to share the contact information for the students who attended, we would love to send them a follow-up. So
Absolutely.
you can, so they have all the information that they need. And then it's also information you'll be able to share with additional people you share the recording with. And
That
thank you
sounds
all
great.
for having us.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you. All right. I'm going to press the button that ends the meeting and everything. And we'll hopefully see you next year and after sending a bunch of our students your way. All right.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.